All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started with our dope panel for today. One of two panels, rather. We've got Ben Thomas. Ben, you have done great work on very affordable microphones of ours.
100%.
With Lil Uzi, and I think you're out doing something else now with somebody.
We can talk about it.
We can?
Yeah.
Okay, you're out with who?
Oh, so I engineer for Pharrell. So I've been doing that.
No big deal. No big deal. Hoping you'll put him on something of ours. We'll see how that goes.
Yep.
And then we got Young Guru, the one and only. Sir, you have been a fabulous artist of ours.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Love you guys.
We all know who he works for. Jay-Z, no big deal there. We've got Ramsees here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Ramsees.
Yeah, I'm recording engineer, producer, mixer. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of people. Robin Thicke, mentored by Bruce Swedien before he let out. Worked with him for over a decade. Helped him publish his last book. Been working locally with a lot of young bands, and artist development has pretty much been my thing, helping up and coming artists and teaching them, and engineers as well. So, yeah.
And then we have Tommy Champion, who he just visited our studio like a week or two ago for the first time. How'd that go?
It was awesome. It was really cool. And I brought in the right band for it. We had a 7-piece band and really made use of the incredible space. But
yeah, and who's your regular clientele?
yeah, it's a little bit varied, but actually Trinidad is one of them. We work a lot together, as well as an artist, KC, or KC Pluto, if you know him, up in New York and LA. And then just a variety of different artists kind of in the hip-hop and rap world.
Cool. So really quickly, I want to get started with just a little bit of an introduction. Myself, I'm Aubrey Young. My husband, he's the founder and president of our company, Warm Audio. I do artist relations. That's kind of my specialty here. So I get to talk to these guys on the regular and collaborate with them on ideas and stuff. We had Guru, for example, in our studio about a year and a half or so ago, and he helped us do our launch for the WA1B. So that was super dope, and we're grateful for him for that. And then Ben Thomas, he's been an artist of ours for a really long time. He used our 47 Junior on Lil Uzi. So Ramsees, he just moved from Florida to Austin, and so he's now working out of Warm Studios. If anybody is ever in Austin, Texas, please pull up to Warm Studios. We made sure to build the nicest studio anywhere in that area. I guarantee it. So, and then Tommy here, he was just there a couple of weeks ago, so he can testify. It sounds amazing in there. So please always visit us here in Austin, Texas. And then Bryce, he's gonna talk a little bit for a second. I wanted to though start the conversation with Guru. I was hanging out with you guys at Mixnick last, July 2024. Wavy Wayne had us out for a Mixnick thing, and we were able to hang out with Guru. And I had this crazy idea. I'm gonna take credit. I hope you're okay. I had this crazy idea to tell Guru that he should maybe get into product development with us in particular. He's a really big fan of like the distressor and things like that. So I was like, yo, we should make a product together. And you could see like a light bulb went on in the dude's head. And ever since then, he has been obsessed with DIY gear and like opening things up and figuring it out and just the science behind audio engineering, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you are definitely the spark. The best way for me to put it, I guess, for the audience is we all have different roles. So, after a certain amount of time, it's like, okay, you win an award for being like the greatest race car driver in the world, and then you want to learn how to build the car. You know what I mean? So some of us just want to drive the car, but I've gotten to the point where I want to actually build the car, and then you figure out all the parts, all the way down to like where does somebody get the rubber for the tires. And then you get into this thing where you have a huge respect for what Warm does, what Bryce does, because you get into the things that aren't just about design, but actually running a company and servicing customers.
It's a whole thing.
That's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
So that's part of the beauty of Warm, of not only making these designs, but delivering them at price points that service all of these people out here.
That's the hard part, right? Yeah, we, it was funny, he called me when he first got onto this kick, and he was like, yo, Obs, what kind of soldering do I buy? Like, literally go find the kind that you guys use at Warm Audio and take a picture and send it to me. He's like, don't tell me the cheap stuff, give me the expensive stuff that I'm supposed to use. So I talked to our repair guys, and I was like, guys, tell me what soldering to tell Guru. He went and bought it, and he's been using it, so.
Yeah, I mean, and then for people that don't build gear or don't know, it's just like, putting your own sort of personality into the design, right? So we're not dealing with things that are supposed to be absolutely perfect, right? If I was designing some type of electronics that, I don't know, controlled the grid for the power for this place, yes, I want to use a bunch of IC circuits and I want it to be perfect, and I don't want anything to vary. But the beauty of the cooking that we do, and I say cooking like that goes into each piece of gear, is that, yeah, we can all have salt and we can all have pepper, but like how much salt, how much pepper goes into this meal. We can all have the same exact recipe and all of our stuff is going to taste different. It's about the cook that does it.
Yeah.
So that's what you start to learn about, like how much of your personality goes into these different circuits. So it's an incredible world.
Yeah, well, let me have Bryce really quick because he's got to go to a meeting, but I do want to kind of have, we've been married 17 years. We just celebrated that over the summer. It's been a good 17 years for the most part. We got 2 kids and we're doing good things. So I put up with him a little bit. But yeah, no, he started basically in our second bedroom of our apartment in college. It looked like a Radio Shack, vomited, all kinds of wires and soldering guns, and it smelled weird, and it was just obnoxious motherboards and all kinds of tubes, all kinds of things. And he was using his off time. He would go work 9 to 5, and then at night he would come home and tinker with gear, buy stuff off of eBay, take it apart, figure it all the insides out, put it back together, take it apart again, change out components, see how it changed the sound. And then over time, he decided one day he wanted to quit his day job and do Warm Audio full time, which it wasn't Warm Audio back then. It was nothing, really. There was nobody buying his stuff. And so he had to figure out how to grow from absolutely nothing. And now here we are 13 or 14 years into our company, and we're all over the globe. And we have people like these guys that are using our stuff, and Jazzy Jeff and Blackstone and Jermaine Dupree and Leslie Brathwaite and just huge Stevie Wonder. Huge people are using our stuff. We're really, really grateful. But I wanted you to talk for a second because I think it'd be dope if you and Guru kind of like join brains and learn how to make something together. Maybe you guys could give us some ideas of what kind of products you think would be dope for us to make. Maybe Guru can have a place in it. But anyways, here you go.
All right, we're going to join brains.
Absolutely.
What are you working on, actually? What are you building at home?
Right now, I'm testing out what different op amps and what different transformers sound like in combination, right? So there's always the classics, right? Everybody will try to recreate the 2520, which is a very just famous op amp that was created mainly for API stuff. Also, if you get into op amps, you're going to run into the 990. That's another just famous one. Looking at different ways and various ways that people have made different configurations. But when you deal with audio, sometimes it's hard to have a word that describes the sound. Like sound is like, what does punchy mean? What does warm mean? What does that, like, so figuring out those things and doing different combinations. So if I have 4 different op amps and 4 different transformers, that means I have 16 combinations of the way that something could sound. So that's what I've been doing, is like building a bunch of stuff, testing it, asking myself, why would I make a certain type of transformer for a particular job? Why what is the difference in between all the different metal? So if I'm doing like sort of an EI combination on a transformer, what is it if it's steel? What if it's nickel? What if it's iron? What if it's copper? What if it's like all of these different combinations? Man. Then you're like, okay, well, the wire that I'm wrapping around this, what if I use a Litz wire instead of just regular wire? Like, you go down this long rabbit hole, all of this stuff that, you guys as the consumers won't necessarily dive into if you don't want to. Like, it's somebody builds a car, you as the user knows how to do the steering wheel, and you know how to put it in drive and reverse. That's all you really need to know how to do. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm looking at my job. It's like watch building. It's all of the stuff that's underneath is what makes the watch go, but for the user, it's supposed to be simple to just look at the big hand and look at the little hand. So as somebody who's been a user for this long, that's what I'm trying to do, is make something that is like simple but not simplistic, right? Simple for the user.
I love how in-depth you've gotten into gear building and stuff, because I didn't expect that, like, just because it came, Aubrey states it came kind of out of nowhere. You were like, I'm going to get into this. She told me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. He'll like buy a kit. He'll build a kit. He'll be proud of himself. He'll use it. But no, like, you're going next level. I want to ask these other guys. So like, have you guys ever owned a piece of tube gear where you've swapped out the tubes? Yeah?
I have not.
Okay. You have? Okay.
Yeah. So I got a really first-hand experience working with Bruce. We were working off his Harrison, and he had two LA two-ways, and we had to swap out the tubes on those. But just going on what Guru was saying, you know, one thing is it gets pretty crazy when you're dealing with all those tubes, transistors, and components. It really does something with the harmonics and the way the signal goes through, and making even just the wire changing and everything. It could just, you just get a whole different sound. You just don't know, you know, especially how you're pushing that signal through that audio gear. You know, how is that going to affect? Am I going to get more resistance? Am I going to get more harmonics? What about that distortion that comes through, especially when you're messing with tubes? You know, big shout out with the ribbon and the MPX. We were messing with that. That thing is sexy as hell. You know, stuff like that. So yes, I've dealt with that, taking out with the Harrison in court when something was wrong with the fader. And me and Bruce, it was crazy. We took out all the channels off that Harrison, and me and him were soldering all the components. He had a whole stack in his back room with extra, and then we were just testing everything. I think we spent like 2 days fixing three fucking channels, and that shit was brutal. And he was on my ass making sure I shot that shit nice.
And just because I have students, I want to make sure that when you're saying Bruce, you're saying it so casually, but I want to make sure that the students know that if this is Bruce Swedien.
Yes, it's Bruce
basically
Swedien.
Did all of Quincy Jones's career, but also two of the biggest albums ever in the world, which is Thriller by Michael Jackson and Off the Wall.
Yes,
so when you're just casually throwing away Bruce Swedien, that's who he's talking about.
I'm sorry, I don't mean
He's
to
a humble guy.
disregard that. Yeah,
He's humble.
No, we became really good friends. So when I say Bruce, or I call him Pops, you know, yes, he worked with all those great artists. But yes, when you're saying that, I get excited because it's fun, but it's fucking tedious as hell. So all those tech guys, guys out there building this stuff, mad respect. It gets pretty gnarly.
So I got a way to segue this into something that I think is more applicable to everybody, right? Because
Right.
not everybody wants to open gear.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't recommend it in a lot of situations. It's really depressing when you spend a lot of money on a kit, you solder it together, and it doesn't work. You're like, oh, I should have just bought something that was pre-built with a warranty or whatever. But what I find fascinating about gear is it's like, you know, you brought up the car analogy. I'm not a car guy. I could get into I don't even know what the coolest car is, but let's say the fastest Mercedes or Porsche or whatever they make, and I probably won't drive that thing as cool as somebody that really knows cars. Gear is very similar. So like the other day we took our 8000, our Sony C800 style microphone. We plugged it into our MPX, which is our Ampex tube preamp at the studio. And we were trying different flavors. This guy, Don, was there. And we were like, when we first plugged it in, I was like, it sounds really good. It's a little on the cleaner side. You know, I prefer to have a little bit more color, some character. So we changed the impedance with the switch on the front. Sorry, I'm getting up a lot of that. Sorry about that. We used the impedance switch on the preamp. All of a sudden, it sounded a little more three-dimensional. Then we switched it to high gain mode on that preamp. Now we added another tube in the circuit, dialed back the gain. Ooh, it sounded really three-dimensional, silky, still clean, but it just had a different 3 to 5%. All of a sudden, it made everybody in the room so much more excited about tracking that vocal because it just gave it that extra little oomph. And I feel like so often with audio, people ask me, what mic should I use? What preamp should I use? They think they're just going to plug these things in and not be a race car driver and not dial it and tweak it and get the best sound. And the tools get you most of the way there, but you gotta experiment. You got to try, what does every switch do in every scenario, and how can that benefit a tone that you like? And you may like a tone different than what I like. You might like a cleaner tone. I might like a more vibey, warm colored tone. So I'll open it up to you guys. Is there ever anything, I don't know, just an eye-opening experience for you where you might have flipped a switch or tried doing something in a different way you hadn't thought of before that made you go, oh? For me, I tell the story a lot, whereas the first time I plugged my mic into a really high-end mic pre. My whole life I thought I had to buy a $5,000 mic, but I had this fairly affordable mic, plugged it into an Avalon 737, this was long before Warm, and I was like, whoa, my low-cost mic sounds way better than this $2,000 mic without a good preamp. And that was my eye-opening experience that got me to fall in love with pre's. So, curious, was there ever a time where you were like, I don't know, you dialed the gain up to where it was saturating and oh my gosh, I recorded the best vocals I ever had, or I don't know, an eye-opening experience with gear? Curious, open it up.
Yeah, for me, one of those moments was when I got a Space Echo, an RE101, and for the first time tried to use it with the Echo off, and like realized how powerful the preamps were on that. And then kind of taking that same philosophy of like, I think a lot of people, we put these price tags on gear and we forget that. I think you hit the nail on the head, Bryce, that bottom line, they're instruments. Like a mic, a preamp, and all this stuff requires skill and learning and testing and going through that to figure out where it sits with you. So I sort of took that idea and then at the time was very into like tape loops with cassettes and even reel-to-reels and was just experimenting with what I could get out of those, even broken ones, and finding different tones and timbres from that. And I think like the kind of pursuit of just new sounds and then documenting it in a way where you can come back to it is the name of the game, because then eventually you'll think back and be like, yeah, I did use that Space Echo, that crazy saturation on this random vocal, but it made the track, And so for me, it's just constantly trying to flip those switches of like, how can I switch this up and still come away with something cool and usable and musical.
Love it. Any other thoughts?
Thank you, brother. Using gear in a way that is not supposed to be used. So when we were working on the Black album, I was extremely happy to work with DJ Quick because like I'm more East Coast based and I hadn't worked with a lot of like the West Coast guys. So back then I was tracking Jay through an Avalon 737, which is considered a very clean preamp. And when Quick had his guitar player, he like literally just plugged his guitar into the DI in the front and turned the pre all the way up without even before he started playing. Just it's like something that he already does. And you would have swore like we put it through a guitar cabinet. And I was like, I would have never. When I look at the Avalon, I think clean. Like so. It's sometimes like abusing the gear will give you a different perspective, and now that's something I do where I plug a guitar in and we'll turn that Avalon and get great like distortion on it when you would have never thought about that box for that.
I think for me, it was when I realized that I had been tracking vocals through a CL1B for a long time. And when I realized that if I just put it in fix mode, then that was the sound that I was looking for, and now I no longer had to worry about like dialing the attack and release in perfectly. It was like, well, now I just need to dial the threshold in perfectly and monitor that rather than constantly monitoring the attack and release on it. And then just like logistically, a lot of times it would be in a rack and somebody would bump it and now everything's all different and now it's like I only have one knob that I'm really focusing on. I think that was a really big eye-opening moment for me.
Love it. You're last. Got one? More soldering?
No, well, kind of going back to what you said about testing. Back when I first started engineering, I had a Audio Technica 2020. And I was using the shit out of that thing for anything and everything. And then, like you said, just changing the mic pre. I saved up enough money. And fortunate enough, it wasn't an Avalon. It was oh man, I forgot the name of it. But anyways, it had two tubes in it. And the other one I had was like more of a solid state, just a straight converter, going into this DAW. And man, that changed everything for me whenever I was doing that. And I would crank that up and it just gave this warm tone and the saturation on the vocal, especially when I was working with this female singer, it just brought that warmth and bottom end of her vocal. And then that really made me understand, like, wow, like once you start pushing the gear and you just do it in a very confident way, don't be scared. A lot of engineers starting out, like even me, we get scared of like, ooh, I don't want to redline it. But sometimes that, don't go off that, just trust your ears and understand what you're pushing through. As long as it's coming through the DAW good and you got good signal, have fun with those things and push those limits. Because you never know what you're going to get. Like Guru and all of us, I'm sure we've been in those situations where you push that and then you get that sound that it just elevates everything at that point, and it helps push you to testing things and understanding how gear works, That's
I love what you said about trust your ear. So often people
definitely
sort of want the gear, like I just want to trust my chain, but I don't want to actually mess with it. I just want to plug it in and hit go. And then I don't want to mess with it because I might mess it up. It's like, well, trust your ear. If it sounds better EQ'd or tweaked or compressed really heavy or distorted, why are we not listening to ourselves? Why are we so, I should wait later and fix it in the mix? We all know fix it in the mix is not what we should do, but we all default to that. Everybody does because they're like, well, I don't want to mess it up before it goes to tape. Well, you're missing out on an opportunity to make it sound so much better than anything you can do in the box later.
There's a thing called paralysis of analysis, right? And we get into that because we have so many options that we're like, before it was like, okay, you plug the guitar in, you put the microphones there, you got a tone from something, and you recorded it. Then when it came to a mix stage, it was kind of like pushing up the faders, right? And you would get a mix. Whereas like now, we could be like, oh, I'm going to record the guitar dry, and I'm going to sit for an hour and flip through 80,000 guitar rig, you know what I mean? Like different things. It's like make a decision, and that's the record. And then that feel is what the feel of the record was that day. It's, yeah, we want a plethora of choices, but we kind of got to make it so that we don't have that paralysis from like so many different choices.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see that video that was on? It's been on YouTube and going around, but where they they were mixing one of Michael Jackson's songs, and like they did it like 100 times, and they finally decided to go on number 2.
That's a Kanye West move too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
What song was
That was Billie Jean.
Billie Jean, that's right.
So-
Yeah, they had done 100 different mixes, and they finally, Quincy was just like, go with number 2, guys. What are you doing here? Why are we on number 99? Like, this is insane.
There's an old saying what I learned. You know, us as, if you're mixing, right? If you're a mix engineer out there, right? We get the song. The song is the first primary thing, right? Doesn't matter if I touch it, Guru, anybody. If the song is shit, it's shit. It's just gonna sound nice as shit, right? I don't mean to be blunt, but I think like usually we get our song. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I really believe like once you get into a song mixing, to me personally, the song is gonna tell you what to do. You're gonna feel it, and I guarantee you, within an hour or so, depending on how long, you already know where the song is going. To me, it's like the rest after that, it's kind of like therapy. You're just fucking with yourself mentally. You know, like you, unless you're experimenting, that's a whole different thing. But the song is gonna tell you what to do. And that's something like with the thing with Bruce and all that. He said he learned, you know, when you get in industry and you're trying to think perfection, and then they forgot, hey, you know, the song is done. That's it. It's good. Trust that. And trust that process that everybody else trusts you to do that and bring that out. I mean, that's pretty much, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the trust your ears thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and to bring that all the way back for Warm, it's like too many times we sit and we'll try to compare this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing. It's just like, no, if I give you a Warm microphone and I give you this compressor and I give you this preamp, it sounds really good. That's all you need to know. That's it. Don't sit there and do all this analyzation and showing me chart. I'm like, again, I've been building gear, so I'm like in chart and schematic world, and I'm like, I could show you the same schematic and it sounds totally different. That's why I put up this thing from Rupert Need, where I was just like, he's like, yeah, we can look at the schematics all day, and it works mathematically, but what does it sound like? That's the ultimate goal. What does it sound like? So that's the biggest point here is to get the gear, to listen to it, and to go, this sounds really good.
Thank you, thank you. I just want to let you know, I know these guys introduced themselves. When we finish up here, I encourage you to talk to them. They're all legends. They've all done incredible things. I know we've been talking about, you know, what sparked your brain to get into gear and tweaking and producing and all of that. What I'd like to ask you is, I know many of you, I know Guru, for example, you use a lot of Warm. I know you've used Warm audio. If you just share, I don't know, an experience with a piece of Warm audio gear, because we are here at the booth, and where you used it, why you liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. I started using Warm audio gear when I was in college, right? And I, as most college students, you know, don't have any money. So I bought the 47 Junior when it came out, and then I had it. Pandemic started. I was like, let me make sure I bring my mic home. And then I got the opportunity to work with Uzi, and that was the only mic I had. I brought it to somebody's basement. We were recording in somebody's basement. Brought it to the basement, set it up directly into the Apollo. Recording, sounded great. Ended up recording a feature for Lil Wayne, sent it over to their team. They called me to compliment how good it sounded. I was like, this is a $300 microphone in an untreated basement. Like, so that was my first experience. So ever since then, I've been hooked ever since then.
Love it, man. Thank you.
I feel like I've been talking the whole time, so it's cool. But I think my first experience was I have a production partner named Volley, and I went over his house and he had this orange thing and it said Tone Beast on it, and I was just like, what is this thing? And he started using it and it sounded really good, and I was like, okay, I should go get one of those. And then you go look up what it is and you're like, it costs how much? You're like, nah, what's wrong with it? How come the normal things that everybody's going to say when they look at Warm, be like, how can Bryce produce this thing for this cost? And that's what really drove me into Warm gear. It was just like, how are they beating everybody by still delivering the quality, but they're not jacking the price up like we all know Jordans don't cost $200 to produce. Like it's really $5 worth of leather. So that was my experience of how I got into Warm.
And I'm going to answer that question at the end when we're done here. Yeah.
So I'll go back to, so me and Tommy worked on that band. Tommy came to Austin, brought the band that he's been working with, and it was like seven piece, right? Percussions, drums. They had like 2 laptops. It was like synths, drums,
Everything.
machines. So it's real recent. And Bryce was there. He was helping out too, because the patch bay. I engineered, but you guys, when you learn a new patch bay, that takes time. So, but a piece of gear that really impressed me was the ribbon mics, because before they came, I had used the ribbon mics for the overhits on the drums, because I like to use ribbon on when I'm doing because the transients, they grab really well to me whenever you run it through. So that really impressed me. So when one of the musicians brought a whole percussion set. It was like pretty much timbales and drums and everything. And I looked at Bryce, and he goes, "Do you want to use the AEA?" And I was like, "Nah, I want to use that 44. You got 2 more?" And and he was like, "Yeah, let's get them." So thank you. That was dope. He went to the warehouse, got 2 of them, and them things sounded like butter. We put them through the MPX stereo,
the
right?
MPX pre, yep.
Yeah, and he was showing me how it was amazing. I mean, that thing sounded butter. And they were really happy with it too. So I guess you can chime in on that, because you were there too.
Yeah, no, I mean,
with it.
the mics, the preamps, the compressors are things I've been fortunate to use for a while. But what really has been interesting to me recently is the pedals here. Because I'm a guitar player, producer first. Like I'm a player. Like I play instruments. Like I'm a little, I like to, when I'm in the studio, I'm cooking up from scratch. I'm playing guitar, bass, keys, synths, and then engineering the vocalist and doing it all at once. So for me, it's really important to circumvent the digital process with something that's hands-on. And so even in the studio, we brought out one of the ring modulator Mogafogers, and I'm a huge Moog guy. I love, a variety of analog synths, but we put it on the guitar player, lead guitar player's chain, and it immediately just brought us into a whole other world, and it sounded great. And then even coming through here today, playing it has me thinking about all these different chains that I would incorporate it in. And so I think it's also important that when there's like these legacy products that have such fame to them, the Mogafogers are famous, these pedals, the Klons, the Mutrons, things like that. Those are things that I've wanted to have in my collection forever. But when you have an updated, accessible version of it, there's really no excuse, especially for someone who likes to play, to not have that in the studio, because those moments of just flipping those switches and doing something a little bit different, and as you said, take out the paralysis analysis, changes the name of the game for me. And more often than not, when also you're getting an artist to touch that stuff too. Like if you bring that in, if you run a chain on a vocal through a ring modulator and you just have the artist adjust the rate or something, it might make the track more often. So having these physical things is a really important part of the process. And as we go digital, it's key to continue to still have gear like this.
And two, for those of us like in the hip hop R&B world as well, don't just think about it as a guitar effect, right? It's something that you can just run something out of your Pro Tools or whatever you're using, run it into that pedal and run it back in, like an actual effect, because that's what it is. So don't just get trapped into thinking that it's just a guitar pedal. It's an effect pedal.
Love it. I just had a thought. So one thing, people always ask me, like, how does the hardware sound in comparison to the plugins and all that stuff? I'm obviously a big hardware guy. There's a guy who was using only plugins, came to our studio, and he used our 1073 style preamps, Neve style preamps. He ended up buying one, and then he, no joke, bought another 7 for his drums. And he'd been using the plug-in version before that, but he's like, dude, I hear the difference. It sounds bigger, it sounds bolder. What I want to mention about hardware, I do really believe it sounds better than plugins. That said, there's a lot more to it. It's about deciding how things are going to sound on the way in. It's also about creating a finished sound on the way in. Your singer is going to perform so much better if they're hearing themselves 98% of the way they're going to sound on the record. I mean, I can't even imagine. It's crazy to me to think, like, there's some really dynamic singers, right? Like, some females can go, like, from this quiet to, like, just crazy loud, right? Like Jennifer Hudson. I can't imagine being Jennifer Hudson's engineer and not using a compressor while tracking her. Can you imagine that? She's singing, she's hearing herself in the headphones, and she's belting out, and it's getting loud in her headphones, and maybe she's got good mic technique, whatever. But if that gear is locked in, she's hitting that preamp sounding smooth, the compressor's controlling her perfect, she's going to perform better. And I'm sure she does have an engineer that does that for her. Actually, one of those engineers is using Warm now. Actually, now that I think about it, I did not do that on purpose. But long story short, I want you guys to spend some time with these guys. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, we were just talking about for a second. You were going to talk about how we keep the price point down, but how do you do that?
So I got an interesting story. I was a little late here. My wife was texting me. She was kind of annoyed that I was late. Sorry, I was late. I was actually at a lunch with the company Lundahl. Who knows Lundahl Transformers? Heard of them before? They're from Sweden. Great stuff. We use Lundahl in our C800 or our WA8000 is the real name. We use it in our WA1B, which is a CL1B style compressor. We also use it in our WA67. We use Lundahl. And Lundahl actually contacted us and said, hey, we got to talk. We got to raise your prices. And so we just went to lunch, and I just said, I don't know if you fully understand what we do. We are trying to give people the absolute most value we can at an incredible price. So people ask, well, how do you get the price down? I don't get it. Other people are using Lundahl Transformers in their products, and they're charging 4 times as much as you. So theirs must be better. What I'm saying is, no, we're negotiating. I'm no joke, negotiating, going to bat so hard against these people. Carnhill Transformers, using our 1073 style mic pre's. I don't share the number very often, so I probably get in trouble with some people at the company here if I share it, how many of those we've sold. But we sold tens of thousands of channels of Neve style mic pre. Why? Because the quality is really incredible at the price point. And when I called Carnhill and said, I want you not only to make me Carnhill Transformers that everybody else is using in their Neve style mic pre's, I want to use the ones that are more similar to the vintage Marinara radars, and I want them custom made for us. I want them actually better than what other people are using, and I want them cheaper. What do I got to do to get that? And they say, well, you got to hit these quantities. We're ordering tens of thousands of transformers, and these companies say, okay, we're going to make a lot less per transformer. We're cool with that if you're buying this many. So it is quantity of scale. We were the first company to say, there is no reason you can't mass produce boutique quality, but you have to get the boutique component suppliers on board. You got to get the guys that make the capsules, the transformers, the tubes, all of that. You got to grind them a bit, and you got to stay on them and go to lunches at NAMM and say, come on, these people are counting on us not raising our prices. So that is how we do it, and that's why people like you see here up on the panel are using this gear, and it's showing up on hit records all over the place.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can advocate that, I'm the wife, right? So I always care about things a little bit differently than like one of our employees. So when Bryce, he ever comes out with a new product, I'm like, hey, babe, how much are you going to charge the people? He'll tell me whatever price it's going to be. And 99% of the time, I'm like, that's it? Babe, like, how are people going to take us seriously if you charging, $900 for a Neumann style 47? Like, that's insane. I want, like Guru was saying, like, what's wrong with it? Right? Like, you're like, there's got to be something wrong with it.
With a Russian tube, with an AMI tab Funkin' Work made in the USA transformer,
you're just
with
a
Wieman
hell of
capacitors.
a negotiator.
It's that, and it's also realizing you don't have to make a lot on each unit sold. You can make just a little bit on every microphone sold and sell a ton of microphones, or you can make a lot and sell 5 microphones a year. Which one do you want to do?
Well, yeah, we want to populate the earth as fast as possible with warm audio gear. Most people can't afford $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 microphones. So if we're going to do that, our business model has to be negotiate the hell out of things, get the prices down, and keep the prices down and don't get greedy, no matter how tempting it may be. We just have to do that because we want all of you to be able to enjoy our products.
And prices went up during the pandemic on a lot of our stuff. We decided to only increase just a hair, but that's just the model I believe in. We're here to give great sound to everyone as best we can. It killed me when I got into recording that to sound good, I had to spend so much money. I couldn't even afford it. It made no sense to me. I'm like, music is about passion. It's about love. It's about expressing yourself. and you're telling me to sound good, I have to be rich? Like, this makes no sense. And so that's the whole belief behind Warm Audio. And I hope you believe it and try some stuff out.
Yeah.
And don't just take my word for it. Take these guys' word, test it out. We're in lots of retailers that will let you try something, return it. You know, anyways, thank you for taking the time with us.
Yeah. Thank
today.
you, guys. Let's give it up to these guys.
Real quick before we jump off here, I want to ask you guys a question that I think will be real beneficial for the audience. So, I imagine I'm the youngest one here. If you were going to start and you only had money for one piece of gear, where do you think people should go first? Like, what do you think is the first thing that people should invest in?
Your preamp is the most important thing.
That's what Bryce always
if you're
says.
gonna start, we're saying just start. Like, everything's important in the chain, but you will get further with a quality preamp and like a lesser microphone than you would with buying a $15,000 microphone going through a crappy preamp, right? That you want the preamp to be first, so that's the first thing you should be concerned about.
What he said, I totally agree. And if you can get it in stereo, get it in stereo. Because one day you might need two and you're asked out. So, but
That sums it up.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but then after that, you know, you go piece by piece. So
Yep.
you get a good preamp, and then you want to get a good microphone, and then you want to get a good compressor. So, you know, just I know everybody's starting out, but then eventually you want to just keep building and keep building and keep building.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. Hang out, ask these guys some questions, and thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it, and please support our brand so we can keep doing the thing that we're doing. Appreciate
Can we
you.
give a round of applause for
Yeah,
Aubrey
round of
and
applause.
the
No.
Warm. Thank you for inviting us. They've been great.
I was going to say round of
yeah,
applause
yeah.
for the legends here up on the stage.